Welcome everyone, I'm Axel Threfall with Reuters. We're at the Responsible Business USA Forum in New York City. I'm thrilled to be joined by Marcus Krembs, CSO at Enel North America. Very quickly, I have to say that Enel is one of the sponsors of this event. I, though, am conducting this interview under the Reuters trust principles, so there won't be any restrictions on what I get to ask you, Marcus.
Sure.
Very nice to see you today. Let's start with the context. The Inflation Reduction Act. Just how much of a game changer has that been for a company like yours?
Well, firstly, the Inflation Reduction Act has been a landmark historic law passed in the United States that is going to have transformative and is already showing evidence of having transformative effects on the U.S. economy and the global climate scenario. The Inflation Reduction Act is estimated to have a roughly 5 to 7 times multiplier of the size of the U.S. renewables market out to 2035, and there will be other industries that are indirectly and positively impacted by the passage of that law.
Of course, Marcus, it's critical that business take up the incentives, take up the things they're being offered. So a lot depends on the uptake. How's that looking?
From the taxpayer side, from the organizations that will actually be adopting the provisions of the law, we've already made certain decisions to capitalize and pursue investments in manufacturing, in renewable energy production, in electric vehicle deployment, electric vehicle charging infrastructure deployment, and from a non-taxpayer or the balance of the market, the buyers community, the suppliers, and the other affected organizations that will be benefiting from this law. We're already seeing positive evidence of those organizations entering the market as well.
And how is it informed? I mean, you run the North America part of this business. How has it informed the decisions you're making here in the US and the strategy decisions you're making, the purchasing decisions you're making? Is it now all to do with the IRA?
It is a lot to do with the IRA. There were some very, very strong fundamentals prior to the passage of the law. So, as we've heard earlier in this conference, wind and solar are already the most cost-effective source of electricity in the United States. But this law really provides that long-term certainty for growth, for investors, for developers, owner-operators, and for corporate offtakers that are interested in driving and accelerating progress towards their net zero and science-based targets commitments.
Does it? What's lacking, would you say, if anything, in this? Should it go further?
Well, I'd say that many other countries will begin to follow suit. We've already seen some indications from Canada. We've seen some responses from the EU, for example, in bolstering some of their incentive mechanisms. So I think that there's really going to be much more momentum, but we need action to actually occur more rapidly and with stronger participation from all parts of the industry.
Okay, so let's look specifically at different parts of the business. I want to start with solar. I know you recently announced plans in Europe on the solar side. I think it was the UK, actually.
It was in Catania, Italy.
Oh, was it Italy? Okay.
Yes.
My apologies. And there's talk, obviously, of similar movement in the US.
Yes,
Can you tell us where you are now with that and how much money you're going to invest in this space?
Well, what I can say at this point is that we've made commitments and we have intentions to build a 3 gigawatt plus 3 gigawatt gigafactory, solar PV manufacturing in the United States. In terms of dollar value, I'm not able to specify the dollar value, but it'll be likely north of $1 billion. And that type of manufacturing facility has been cemented and stimulated by the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. And it will, of course, help to localize our domestic supply chains and to increase the circularity of our business to support our future growth.
When can you give us any kind of time frame on this?
We expect for that plant to begin commercial operations by 2025.
Okay. Similar things in wind?
Well, in wind, we'll still be relying upon our Tier 1 original equipment manufacturers, many of which do have domestic manufacturing capabilities and operations, but we at this point don't have any plans to produce or manufacture major wind components.
A lot of big companies like yours grow in this space through acquisition. Smaller clean tech businesses, for example. How much of that are you doing compared to your own development of sort of transformative, innovative projects within the company?
So I would start at the global level, and at the global level, Enel is committed north of $200 billion out through our 3-year Capital Markets Day plan, and that's going to be largely invested in clean energy infrastructure. Over 95% of those investments will be driven in clean energy infrastructure and deployment. In the United States, our core business on the renewable side is exclusively organic growth. Now, there may be some asset rotation that occurs to optimize our portfolio and technology and regional focus. And in our flexibility and distributed energy resources side of our business, we have grown through some acquisitions over the last 5 to 7 years.
Moving to the whole equitable, just transition to a clean energy piece. Let me start with the ESG reporting a bit and the backlash that we've seen, particularly here in the States,
Sure.
On that. How difficult has that made some of what you're doing?
Well, it's influenced the language that we use when we interact with stakeholders. So we would likely not talk about ESG unless we're engaging with our institutional investor and tax equity partners. When we're interacting with our everyday community stakeholders, our landowners and our partners, we're talking about jobs and economic development and clean air and protection of the environment. Okay? So, and that does resonate with those stakeholders.
So you've taken ESG out of your language, out of your communication with those groups?
With those major stakeholder groups, we never started using that language in the first place with those stakeholder groups, but of course it is the currency of our interactions with many of our investment partners.
And again, on these pieces, making it equitable, making it just, I mean, these are areas in which companies can really set themselves apart. What's Enel's line here? How do you set yourselves apart here?
Well, we first started by being one of the first utilities globally to commit to the principles on just and equitable transition with the B Lab. That was roughly 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. We've taken those principles and we've driven them into how we site, construct, develop, and operate, and ultimately provide second life applications for our facilities by putting equity and inclusion at the core of everything that we do as a company. So this is a very important set of commitments that we've taken that also have been in effect codified into the Inflation Reduction Act through certain incentive adders that they've allowed for developers to pursue around developing projects in energy communities or historically disadvantaged communities as well. So we will begin to see significant investments through the pursuit of those the tax incentive measures that will allow for rewards for developers to pursue projects in those areas. But that would not at all be possible if it weren't for the availability of a qualified and skilled workforce that we can rely upon to construct those projects. So while those principles are sound and that will be the pursuit of our sector, one of the fundamentals we need to also pursue is investing in a skilled and talented workforce for the next several decades.
And just to finish up, Marcus, and you know, your CEO is well known for his views and the phasing out of fossil fuels completely. His views on offsetting are well known as well. The context is the IPCC and the reports it brings out and the whole shift to net zero. Is 1.5 degrees remotely possible anymore, would you say?
With action that has been committed today at the corporate level and with national development commitments, the outlook is moderately pessimistic. However, the urgency for everybody in this room and in the audience who's listening to this interview needs to take away that they need to take action now and increase and accelerate their net zero transition plans.
Okay, Marcus, thank you very much for talking with us.